Okay, so this solo starts out on an A chord, and I play just a basic major pentatonic phrase, just to kind of set up this solo. Then we go right to the E chord, the E7 chord, right? So this is a prime example of a functioning dominant 5 chord. It's actually the 5 chord in the key we're in, so it's very easy to notice. So I'm going to play this diminished arpeggio, and what I'm going to do, since I'm landing on the E note over the A chord out of the major pentatonic, I'm just going to go up a half step to the flat 9 of this E7 chord, which is F, and play my diminished arpeggio right there. And then we come back to A, so all I have to do is drop that down a half step and I'm on a chord tone of A. So right there is, right, so A, E, back to A. So perfect example of how to use a simple little diminished idea to alter that dominant chord, right? And the nice thing is we're playing some notes that we wouldn't normally play if we were just thinking pentatonic blues or arpeggios. We're kind of breaking out of that and we're starting to think in a little bit different way and thinking about the function of the chords and what's happening harmonically between these chords. Now, so we continue on the solo. We go down to A7, and that's going to set us up to go to the 4 chord. And so I'm going to do my diminished arpeggio now over the A7 chord to get to the 4 chord, because again, A7 is the 5 chord of D, so it's functioning as a dominant 5 chord. So we can play the same diminished idea over that chord. And now I'm going to start here on the 3rd, and I'm going to go right up that diminished arpeggio. So 3rd, 5th, flat 7th, flat 9 of A, and then again I'm targeting chord tones. Now I'm in over my D7 chord, so I'm targeting chord tones of that chord. Right, so now I'm on D. Now the chord change goes up a half step to a E flat diminished chord. But this is kind of an interesting thing about diminished chords, is that they can start on any of the 4 notes of the chord. So a lot of people will call this like a sharp 4 diminished or a flat 5 diminished. But I really just look at it as the 1 chord. It's an inversion of A diminished. So I can play an A diminished arpeggio, which would be the root, the flat 3rd, the flat 5th, and the 6th of A right over this chord. So that's exactly what I play. I just come up A diminished. And then that leads me right back to my A chord. So that's a great trick if you are playing over a song that goes 4, sharp 4 to the 1. Just treat that sharp 4 like a diminished 1 chord. So now we're back to the 1 chord, and I'm back to my A major pentatonic stuff. But now I'm coming to the 6 chord. So the next part of this progression is our 6 dominant, 2 minor, 5 dominant, down to our 3 dominant, right? So a lot of chords to navigate through here. But the 6th chord is a functioning dominant chord, again, going to the minor 2 chord. So we're going to do the diminished thing again. That's what we're working on, right? So I'm seeing this F sharp 7 voicing, and I'm seeing there's the 3rd of the chord. I can build a diminished arpeggio off that. I'm also seeing this chord. I can add the flat 9 in that chord. And harmonically, that's kind of what I'm hearing, right? That sound of that flat 9, building tension, and then releasing to this B minor chord. So I just play, right, which is a pretty classic kind of jazz phrase, right? I'm playing this diminished, and then again, I'm kind of encircling this minor third. I'm playing below it, playing it above it, and then coming down chromatic. So again, in my mind, I'm targeting that note, but I have these little maneuvers that I can use to get to that chord tone. Right, and then our next chord is E7, right? And like I said before, normally you'd have a 6, 2, 5, 1. So you would have 6, 2, 5, 1. So it's kind of repeating itself. It's like a 5 to 1 followed by a 5 to 1. So you could take these licks and you can just move the whole thing down a whole step, right? So then I can go, if I was going back to the 1 chord, right? So that's kind of what I'm thinking here. I'm going, then I go, so there I'm playing the same diminished arpeggio built off the third right there over the C7 chord. But now this is the interesting part, because we're not going back to the 1 chord. We're actually going down to the C-sharp 7 chord. And one of the things you'll notice is that E7 and C-sharp 7 are a minor third away. So the same diminished arpeggios work over both those chords. If I build this diminished arpeggio off of A flat to play over my E chord, or G sharp, sorry, over my E chord, that also works equally well over the C chord, because I can move these things around in minor thirds, right? So I can continue with that diminished idea over both those chords, and that's exactly what I do. I play that diminished, and then I go up, that diminished, and then go up a minor third, right? So that's starting on G sharp, that's starting on B, and that's starting on D. And now all I have to do is figure out how to get out of it. That's the thing with these diminished arpeggios. When you start moving them around in minor thirds, you can easily get confused and get disoriented. So you've always got to be anticipating the next chord, and that's why it's so helpful to know those basic arpeggios. So wherever you are, you can always kind of recalibrate yourself and go, okay, there's the chord shape for the chord I'm heading to, and there's the chord tones that fit to that chord. So in this case, I'm going to F sharp minor, but I'm up here, so I'm going to see this F sharp minor voicing, and I know, the chord tones that are within that chord. So I'm going, right, diminished, and then right here is the 5th of that F sharp minor chord, right? So let's see. Again, I'm kind of encircling this minor third of the chord. So that's right, that's what I'm playing over. Right. So now I'm heading to the 2 chords. So I just play a simple little pentatonic phrase and land right on the root of that 2 chord, nothing fancy. And then we're kind of in the turnaround section where it goes back to the 5 chord, and I just kind of play this. Hit that again. Right, kind of a classic blues turnaround phrase over that 5 chord going back to the 1 chord. So now we're in the second time around, and I kind of start out playing some sort of blues, major, minor, pentatonic kind of stuff. And that's kind of a little thing where I'm bending the note up a half step and then kind of sliding into it. That's just kind of a little embellishment that I'll use sometimes. Right, so that's all just kind of over our E, over our A7, E7, just kind of playing blues over that. Now we're setting up to come to the 4 chords. So again, I can play this diminished thing. So this time I'm going to start on the flat 9 of the A7 chord. And then I'm going to move this whole shape, because it's symmetrical, I can move it all up 3 frets. Right, so, and then I just have to figure out how I'm going to land it. So I'm seeing this D7. So again, it's so important that you know those arpeggios, especially as we start adding more layers and getting more complicated with altered chord tones. Knowing those fundamentals of you know, your basic chord shapes is so important. So right, so I played something like that. Right, into the D chord. Now we're playing our D sharp diminished chord. So I'm seeing this. Right, this D shape, I can just move that up a half step and play a diminished arpeggio, right? Just stacking minor thirds, starting on D sharp. And then I'm into the 6-2-5-1, right? So I'm going back to the 1 chord. So here I just play simple A major pentatonic. Right? And now I'm coming to the 6 chord, so kind of play this little pickup phrase to get to the 3rd of my F sharp, coming down from E. Right? And then that again is diminished, right? So right there, all minor thirds. So diminished arpeggio built off the 3rd of this F sharp chord. It's a little different because now we're stretching it out over some strings, so we're not in a position anymore because we're up on this higher string. We've kind of run out of space. So we have to you know, try to visualize these things in different ways, and that's one of the things you can work out as you're practicing. When I'm practicing this stuff, I will go really slow and I will focus just going from 1 chord to the next and try to work out these little maneuvers of how I can get from point A to point B. So I might see that leading to this B minor chord. So that might be a move that I, you know, work out slowly as I'm practicing. I'm going, okay, I'm going from A7 to F sharp 7, right? Then to B minor, then to E7. So I want to navigate through those chords. So there's my A. That's how I'm going to get to the F sharp. That's how I'm going to get to the B minor. And then now I'm down to the E chord, right? Just from B minor. Right, again, targeting the 3rd of the chord. And now I'm going back to A. So I'm on the 3rd. Why not do another diminished arpeggio? Right, so that's just 3rd, 5th, flat 7th, flat 9 to the 3rd of our A chord. Right, so that's how we wrap that up.